Okay. Good morning, everyone. Shall we do a call to order?
We'd like to call to order the meeting of the Moraine Wildfire Prevention Authority Finance Committee meeting. Today is Monday, March 6th, and it is 10:06 a.m.
Thank you. And sorry for the delay for a few minutes here. Okay, should we do a roll call, please?
Certainly, starting with Director Goins,
You do your mic.
Here.
Director Finn,
Here.
and let's go with Chair Kurtz.
Here.
Director Donahue looks like is not currently here at the moment. Director Burke.
Here, and my apologies for not being in the room. I goofed.
And we did get notification that both Jason Weber and Dan Schwartz will not be here this morning.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. First up on the calendar is the consent calendar. Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry. Any agenda adjustments? No, we're all good. All right. And now we'll move on to open time for public expression.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the open time for public expression, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And Madam Chair, we do not have any hands for public expression.
Okay, thank you. And now we're moving on to consent calendar. Any questions, items for consent? No? Any questions from the public on consent?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar item, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand if joining by phone. And there are no hands for comment.
Okay. I'll bring it back. Any, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Please.
And we have a motion by Tom Vinn and then a second by Bruce Goings to approve the minutes of the December 5th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. Roll call starting with Director Goings.
Aye.
Chair Kurtz.
Aye.
Chair Kurtz.
Aye.
And Director Burke. Burke.
Aye.
Director Finn.
Aye.
And we still currently do not have Director Donahue or Director Burke is here. Jason Weber is not here and Dan Schwartz is not here. And Dan Schwartz a unanimous vote of those in attendance.
Thank you. All right, moving on to executive officers report.
I'll keep this short and sweet. We've talked about one more reminder that because we have a lot of rain, doesn't mean that we need to drop our vigilance for our wildfire preparedness. You could argue that it increases the need for. Let me see. I think Martinez, as she walked. Okay, so just a reminder. Maybe we just have Zoom lag.
This is happening.
Nope. I think the Zoom needs to be open and the projector needs to be. He's much better looking. Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that better? Perfect. All right. I think that we found the glitch. Yeah, he gave me a thumbs up. So we're good to go. From the top, I'll keep it short and sweet, or at least I was trying to keep it short and sweet. With this weather, it's easy to drop our guard, but we do need to keep our vigilance up. We're still working with our webmaster to modify our science and research page so that we have the weather tab. And so the research that shows the fire season following a drought busting winter has historically been a devastating fire season. And I've gone into the science, I won't bore you guys with that. What I really want, what's I think pertinent for the finance committee to hear today is how hard the ATC and the ops committees are working right now. We had our one of the first ATC meeting where they vetted the JPA wide projects. That went really well. We had several excellent presentations for the JPA wide projects. They received some feedback. Then that means that Wednesday of this week, Ops Committee is going to hear those same presentations following the feedback from the ATC for the JPA wide projects. Then we can have the ATC or the Ops ad hoc subcommittee and the ATC ad hoc sub start with their prioritization process. Remember, we talked about having a prioritization pool, and then those subcommittees will make recommendations to the full committees on either points or the thresholds, the price thresholds for the JPA wide projects. And also for the, when we get to start talking about the zone projects, we'll go through that same process. So March is committed to the JPA wide, and then April will be committed to the overall projects so that we can bring the full packet back to May, or back to Finance Committee in May and then the board in May. So lots of work going on at the ATC and Ops. Nope, open any questions from y'all.
Yep, Mark, thanks for the report. I'm fascinated by this concept of prioritization process. I know that we've talked about it. Will the ATC or ops team give us a presentation so that the board can comprehend kind of the issues that they're tracking, what criteria they're using, just for public information?
That priority, yeah, when we do bring the full packet to the board, yes, we will include the prioritization process.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Brown? No? All right, thank you very much. Do you want to, you don't go to the public, right? All right. Any questions from the public?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the executive officer's report, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, or and then *6 to unmute yourself. And Madam Chair, there are no hands for public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. And moving on to committee reports, Citizen Oversight Committee. Hi.
I'm Kingston Cole, and I'm on the Citizen Oversight Committee, and on the Finance Subcommittee, and I can, and the Finance Subcommittee report, which will be sent to the Writing Committee, it's going back and forth. It's about 90% done, complete. The Writing Committee just asked for some explanation, and Larry Chu's writing it, most of it. Larry, please tell us what all these procedures are that you take for granted, you know, and he's complying with that. I think it'll be finished by late next week at the latest. The other committee reports, they're still in transition. You know, the work plan is the interesting one. I'm not quite sure where it is. Thank
Okay.
you.
When you refer to work plan, the MWPA's work plan, or?
Well, it's a Citizen Oversight Committee. One of the responsibilities is reviewing the work plan. I'm
Right.
just saying that particular ad hoc subcommittee that is in charge of doing that is still in flux on what they're finally.
I see,
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Sure,
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Any questions for our Citizen Oversight Committee? We're all good?
Madam Chair, we also have committee member John McCauley from as well.
Okay.
And sir, you should be able to deliver your comment.
Hey, nothing really to add. You know, Citizen Oversight Committee is not a policy-making committee, so we're here basically just to observe and, here we are observing.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time and work on that. All right, moving on to discussion items. Yeah. Someone give me acknowledgement. Yes, are we all moving on? Okay, who has this?
I have the
Okay.
pleasure to report out on our NBS parcel tax levy report. NBS, as a reminder, is the firm that we contract with to analyze all the parcels that qualify for the JPA wildfire tax on the tax rolls. They are the ones that process how many square feet the buildings have. They process our low-income senior exemptions, and then they send a report to the county on what each parcel should be taxed. And then they send us an end-of-year report of what we should, based on that data, what we should receive. And they are saying that we will receive $20,498,231.26, which is 0.02% below our projected revenue that we came to you last year. So I think it validates our revenue projection process. That's one of the benefits of having a very, very stable revenue source, and that is a property tax based on square footage rather than a property tax based on value or property tax or a sales tax, where we would have a much harder time projecting that revenue. So this allows us to, also within that report, it tells us exactly how much we earned revenue wise from each of our 5 zones. So that tells us what percentage revenue for each of our zones. And so that what that does, when we go to create our ops budget, that says how much is 100%, how much is, and then we can project to how much is 80% for our zones to be able to track our threshold, our requirement that we spend 80% of revenue in the zone in which it was acquired in. So for this year, for the prioritization process, we'll be telling the zones what your 80% threshold is. And we'll be holding 20% off to the side for prioritized projects. That's the process where the ATC will be using criteria and their subject matter expertise, to be quite frank, for prioritizing projects, make a recommendation to ops committee, who can also, they can adjust as needed and then bring it to the full board. You'll also notice, if you have a keen eye, that this number, the 20,498,000, is slightly different than what's on the spreadsheet for our projected budget. And the reason for that is this budget, this number was based on NBS's report saying, if everybody pays to the penny what they're supposed to pay, that's what you're going to get. The number that's on our spreadsheet is based on our 55% first check that we got from the county, and then extrapolating the remaining 45%. And so that's why those numbers are slightly off. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for the director? Please, Bruce.
So Mark, to understand then that this coming fiscal year is the first year in which we'll be swaying from the actual percentage that each zone is due, if you will. And so the 80% figure over then 5 years, I'm assuming that we're going to institute a process to begin to track that, to make sure that we're within 80% in 5 years. Is that yet a piece of work yet to be done?
No, it's actually, it's already started.
It
So
is.
you're correct in that we budgeted 100% of revenue for each of the zones. Now, whether they expended that 100% due to bandwidth issues within your organization is another question. This year will be the first year where we're setting the ceiling at 80% and using a prioritized process. So you may see some zones only get budgeted 80% of their revenue, where some zones may get budgeted 110 or more percent. As far as tracking through the years, you're actually going to see that in the COC's report for the in the finance section, where I've worked with Larry Chu to create a spreadsheet that shows where we are year by year with that percentage. And actually 3 out of the 5 zones are already at that 80% level.
Okay, yep. I'm just thinking through the kind of the process, and I just realized that if you're starting with 80%, you're guaranteed
Yeah.
for each zone to have 80%. So I apologize for the question.
No apologies. And the reason why two of the zones will not show that they've reached that 80% threshold is because we haven't had the bandwidth for them to get those projects implemented. But we're seeing that tilt where the agencies are starting to get the bandwidth. And we are tracking really well this year to expend what we budgeted.
Any other questions? No, any questions? Nope. Alrighty. I have a follow-on question. In terms of, can you just remind us again around the carryover? So you talked about if people are not, if the jurisdictions are not fully using their annual allocation, will that then roll over? And how does that work with the 80%?
So we've been keeping that carryover within the zone at which it was needed to be carried over, so that it helps us maintain that 80%. So we don't get way out of whack. And that at year 5, we find out that we had a long or a big distance to bridge. So we've been keeping it in the zone, the rollover, we've been keeping it in the zone in which it was budgeted for.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. And a follow-on question. I was trying to think if there was any variables that would impact the revenue that we get from the parcel tax. I mean, it's not subject to really, I don't think, inflation or recession, right? I guess just people paying.
It's people paying, it's the number of low-income senior exemptions, which quite frankly is a small number.
Mhm.
So it's a negligible amount. The county is slow growth, so we don't see much construction, although with the housing allocations that are working through, we will see an increase in that. Our biggest threat is if we're not doing our job well enough and we have a devastating fire that destroys many homes, then that's our drop of revenue.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? No? Take that out to the public.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the fiscal year annual report for the special parcel tax, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And Madam Chair, there are no hands for comment.
Okay, we'll bring it back. We're all good. This is just a discussion item and we'll continue to track and follow, and it's nice to receive the funding. All right, moving on to action items. We have the consumer price index tax rate adjustment.
That's correct. So within the Measure C tax ordinance, we are allowed up to 3% of an increase of our proceed or of our tax levy based on this February to February CPI. Well, the February to February CPI does not get released until about mid-March. However, we're pretty confident it's going to come up above 3%. There is not a banking allocation allowed where, and what I mean by that, let's say it comes out at 4.5%, we have 3%. We can't bank that remaining 1.5% to use in a subsequent year where it comes, let's say the CPI was 2%. Just wanted to clarify that in case people thought we can bank it. The first year of the MWPA's existence, COVID year, also a year that we greatly underspent, and we did not recommend to the board the cost of living adjustment. Last fiscal, knowing that we were increasing our bandwidth, we also knew that costs for implementing these projects were increasing. We did suggest that board approved a 3% increase. Based on our spending rate this year and based on the increased costs that we have seen, we are recommending again that we add that 3%. And I do, like I said in the last report, expect to expend all of our budgeted revenue for this fiscal. And I'll use the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break as an example. It's the cost per acre is quite a bit more than we had anticipated. So if we don't implement the 3%, we see ourselves falling behind. Especially we are going to have the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break and the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break being implemented at the same time. So our burn rate on our project monies are going to be pretty high.
Absolutely. All righty. Any questions, comments? Oh, Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Mark. I just wanted to clarify one thing in my own mind. So looking at the FY 24 proposed budget, it shows an $11 million surplus. I'm just wondering what that surplus consists of.
That I'll describe that when we get to that budget item. But the real simple answer is because we have not programmed in the operations budget, all the core projects into that framework yet. This is just setting the framework.
Okay, so the 3% CPI increase is consistent with what you expect the expenditures to be in the coming year.
That's correct. They
Okay,
actually will probably fall behind.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's
Okay.
right. too.
thank you.
Are we, and then as you come back following year or mid-year, we can probably track that.
Correct.
Okay, okay, great. And this will be an item that we'll do every year to check whether we are able to do that increase or not do the increase.
That's correct. And we have it programmed into our budget preparation policy as the March meeting, since that's typically when the February to February. And then we also have to have the timing to put the public notice in newspapers to say that the tax rate is or is not going to change.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bruce?
So Mark, forgive me here, but I don't have the agenda or my laptop. I looked at that NBS document and there was an appendix A that was not included in the packet. Can you enlighten us as to what that appendix
That
is?
is the parcel by parcel, every single parcel within the MWPA, its address and how much was. So for public record purposes, I didn't put that in there.
Thank you, Mark.
I should have had that in there. to let you know why
Okay.
there wasn't. in there.
Now I know why it wasn't included in the package. Thank you.
Oh,
We
all
would
right.
need a hand truck to bring your.
All right. Did we already go out to? No,
No.
let's go out to public comment.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the Consumer Price Index tax rate adjustment, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And Madam Chair, we have no hands for public comment.
All right, great. So we'll bring it back. This is an action item. We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
And starting with Director Finn,
Aye.
Director Goings,
Aye.
Director Burke.
Aye,
We still currently do not have Director Donahue. Neither do we have Dan Schwartz or Jason Weber, and Chair Kurtz.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Question on that. Are we going to communicate to the public on that adjustment?
Yes, we have to post a notice in the newspapers that's saying that we will, if the board approves it. So we'll put this into consent calendar for saying that the finance committee recommended this approval, then the board approves it. And again, we'll still have to have that language of 3% or the CPI, whichever is less, based on it's actually the day after our board meeting that the cost adjustment, the February to February comes out. And then once that comes out, then we can start the process of the public notification.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, budget planning.
And budget planning for this, I'm going to do a screen share. I think it makes it a little bit easier to discuss when you're actually looking at the numbers rather than just hearing me blabber on about the numbers. And based on the feedback that we received last year from the finance committee, we included what the budget allocations were for this year and that you can compare them to last year. The projected revenue is based on the 3%. If that is what the CPI is for that revenue. And this goes to this first column right here really goes to Director Burke's question, is that since we have not gone through the entire work plan, we haven't been able to, with the ops committee, we have not been able to project what the projects are for each of these sections. And so that's what the JPA wide projects is really this highlight. These are really the JPA wide projects that they're vetting right now. And then when we get into April, they'll be vetting this section. And so when we come to the finance committee in May, numbers will actually be populated in this to show what the, down at the bottom, what the projected surplus or deficit will be. For the remainder of the conversation, I'm actually going to work from the 20% categories first. Based on the 21,000 or 21 million and change, we're able to project what the D-Space program is going to be. So 4.2 million in D-Space. And I'll just say, out of a little bit of a hint of pride, I challenge any county in the state to show that they're putting $4.2 million towards defensible space program. And we are a small county. And I think that's hats off to our taxpayers to recognize that this is such an important item. And I've said this before, but I think at the end of 10 years, and we look back at our successes, we will most likely say our defensible space program is our number one success. And then we have our local mitigation projects that come in at 4.2 million. You also notice that there is a D-Space abatement program that we pull out 2% prior to passing off to the member agencies for the D-Space. However, that's an option within the language, and the ops committee may consider a request to the MWPA to discontinue that, because quite frankly, the abatement program has not been proven to be cost effective. It takes so many staff hours, so many legal hoops to jump through to do these forced abatements on properties, that we're finding that volunteer abatement and education is working better than these forced abatements. The next category is our administrative costs. And again, we cannot have more than 10% of our core budget go towards admin. So we take the 21 million, multiply it by 6%, multiply that by 10%, and that comes up with our bottom line of 1.262 million for our administrative budget. We are still working with Southern Marin, who provides our financial administrative services, what this fiscal year's projection is. We've actually exceeded the hours that we had originally anticipated that they would be putting towards the MWPA, so they're going to be adjusting for that. Our legal services this year, we're tracking right on with the projected amount, and we built in a cost of living adjustment that each of our firms have built in for that. Our personnel costs were captured there, professional services, and the services and supplies will be the difference once we figure out what this number is right here from Southern Marin. And then we also need to capture where we have grant revenue. So we have the 3.25 million in grant revenue. And then this interagency reimbursement is where Southern Marin decided to use some of their local monies to go towards a grant program hosted by the MWPA's JPA wide grant program. Last year's fund balance, that was the unspent of the 4 million. And so that gives some of the additional revenue that we have available for this year. Again, all those are TBD for this next fiscal. And the CAL FIRE is going to be really happy with us, because CAL FIRE hates it when people get a grant and not spend it. Well, we're doing a really good job of spending this grant down. We had projected 3 years to spend down on this grant. I bet you will be spent down through the grant in 2 years. And then just to go back up, and I'm sorry if I'm making people dizzy as I scroll through the screen share, but just a reiteration that these under expenditures, this first section here is the JPA wide projects, which are being vetted now. And then the reason why we have to do that is that once JPA wide projects are vetted, then that gives us that 80% target, or what the rest of the core budget looks like. And then we can compute the 80% thresholds for each of the 5 zones. One thing we do meticulously track, though, is how much of the core projects, the JPA wide core projects, are actually spent in each zone. So I'll use Chipper Days as an example. As Stephen Peters manages his Chipper Days program, we know exactly how much of that project has been spent in the West Zone, Northern or Nevada, so on and so forth. For grants, SurveyMonkey is what we use for our grant platform. It gives us a report by zone instantaneously. When it comes to stuff like public education, then it's hard to gauge where the public education was received. So we use the percentage of revenue, the percentage of population for that area to project what percentage of our public education budget was spent in a zone, unless it is a specific public education program. Both Santa Fe and Novato have public education programs. Those we just isolate into their own zones. So we do track where the JPA wide money was being spent in each zone. So, and then you add that to the core individual projects, and that's how we come up with the master percentage. And that, again, you'll see that in the COC finance report coming up.
Right.
And I'm going to stop my screen share unless there's some particular item that you guys would like me to scroll to, and I'll take questions.
No, I'm happy to open it up for questions. Questions, please.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for a great report. I have three questions for you, starting at line number, it's the 4,100 county interest figure, $3,500, 22, 23, and $10,000, 23, 24. Can you refresh my memory? Are we as to the nature of that commitment?
So basically our tax proceeds are held within the county's treasury bank account, and it actually has a really good interest rate. So this includes our 3 million of restricted reserves and interest, as well as our fund balance being carried within that bank account.
So again, this is revenue.
This is revenue.
Okay, that makes me happier. The second question is on line under the core program under contingencies 6015-8 contingencies. I'll just say contingencies are it's a vague line item from my perspective, and I just find myself wondering. Is there an articulation of what those contingent,
Absolutely.
we have policy? Maybe just start with, do we have a policy or direction in regards to ATC and ops identifying contingencies? It's a line item I've always been uncomfortable with fiscally, and so I find $184,000. That's a lot of money for what deliverable I don't know. So can you just talk a little bit about contingencies and the direction and what we might expect, and then reporting on contingencies if necessary?
So we actually started at 125,000 for contingencies last fiscal. And then when we had the rollover from operational costs from 21-22 into 22-23, that's what brought up that number to a higher number. We picked 125,000 because that's 10% of our core budget. And we feel that 10% contingency is a safe number. And this is to be used for JPA wide projects. It could be used for projects that are within the core zones. And an example of us using it for fiscal year 22-23 was for the grant program. When we came in short, we're starting to exhaust those funds. We moved 100,000 from the contingencies into the grant program. For any of the projects that, let's pick, let's say the Santa Rafael's Ridgewood project that they're working on, which is an important project, that if they came in a few percent over, then we would be able to tap into those contingencies. And it's when we work with the ops committee to finalize the JPA wide projects, we'll project what the rollover is and then decrease what is proposed with the anticipation of the rollover.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there is a real-time tracking of the account, and then there is real purposeful movement of that fund into specific projects, if you will.
Correct.
So just making sure that that's real visible. Again, contingencies make me uncomfortable. Always have. It's a request for funding. If it were the grant world, and you had $1 million to give, and somebody wants to do a project, well, it's $100,000, and give me 10 for contingencies. It's better that you put that into a project line item. So anyway, it sounds like it's being tracked.
Yes.
Well, and the 10% sounds reasonable to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I have one other suggestion, actually, and this goes back several years to the administrative costs under line 6630. We have total administrative costs, and something that I had asked for as president, my first month as elected president of Southern Marin was to include a line item that tells us what percent actual administrative is in the budget. And I have this as 6.95% last year, but it just to add a line item there so that someone that looks at this, they look at the administrative costs, and then we just say, and by the way, less than 10, it's 6.95.
We actually
I'm
have
just
that in our-
requesting that you add a line item.
If that's not on this one, but if you look at our monthly ones that we bring to the board, it does put that in there.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Any other questions? No. I was sort of on the same line. I go back and forth between the monthly financials and then this, and there's one column that I would think it would be helpful to have in there is the actual to date.
Easy.
Right, yeah, so I mean, because I sort of manually try to do it, but if we're gonna use this going forward, this format going forward, just putting that actual to date, unless there's another document, we already have that.
No, I'll talk to Elisa. That's an easy fix for us. We just,
Yeah. So that way we could see, like, was the budget from the prior year reasonable, and do we need to think about the following year?
you bet we'll have that for the May,
Great, thank you.
along with the percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be helpful. And then, based on your early conversations with ATC and ops, do you think there'll be another line in expenditures that we'll need to include?
I don't think so. I think last year's adjustment to expenditure lines got us to where we needed to be. And we've got this, and we also have those, and the reason why I'm confident in saying that is that we have those expenditure lines also aligned with our goals.
Mhm.
And so that's why I don't see them growing anymore.
Is there any discussion around more direct support around the grant program, or would that be wrapped into that program?
It would be wrapped into the grant program, but we are looking how we can get into the direct assistance program, very much modeling what Santa Fe's been doing. County Fire has been doing it as well. And we are waiting on the federal government to make a decision on the $5 million grant that we requested for direct assistance programs. We did reach out to them because they were supposed to decide in December. And we did reach out to them going, well, we had some delays. And so thank you for your patience. We don't know when we're going to get you an answer.
Hopefully before we do the budget. Okay, great. So that's really helpful.
And one thing I should note for you guys that at our March board meeting, we will be bringing in a request for us to apply for a grant for the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break through the Cal Fire Prevention Grant Program. And we are actually looking to max the grant amount, which is about $5 million.
Great. Really nice. All right, very good. Any other questions, comments? No? Got you online there. All
I'll
right,
stop my screen share.
okay. And then we'll move it out to the public.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item 9B, fiscal year 23-24 annual budget planning, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Madam Chair, there are no hands for public comment.
All right. Bring it back. Anything? Okay. And so we'll you would like a motion?
Yeah, so if you guys approve the framework, now we can bring this framework to the ops committee to start working on the detailed core budgeting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'll move to approve.
Great.
Second,
There's a second? Did you? Oh, hi. Okay. Thanks.
I saw the screen light up.
Great. Thank you. All right. Roll call, please.
And that's a motion by Director Finn, seconded by Director Burke to approve the fiscal year 23-24 annual budget planning, starting with Director Finn.
Aye.
Director Goins,
Aye.
Director Burke.
aye.
And we still do not have Director Donahue, nor do we have Dan Schwartz or Jason Weber. To you, Chair Kurtz.
Hi. All right. So that motion passes, and best of luck. Spend all that money. All right. Any, moving on, any informational items? Anyone? No? Okay. Any future agenda? Yeah, please.
maybe Mark, I know that you've presented on the work that One TAM has done, the regional priority plan. And I think from a fiscal perspective, that it offers a promising source of potential revenue in this coming fiscal year, I would think, the 23-24. Anyway, would you comment on that, Mark, please? Thank you.
The state's shifting gears, and it's slowing down how and when they can distribute those funds. And if originally they thought it would be the Coastal Conservancy and the Department of Conservation that would be distributing those regional forest and fire capacity funds. And now they've decided it's going to fall back within CAL FIRE's program. So now CAL FIRE is going to have to work through their systems to be able to offer these grants. And our goal, a lot of, and with those within state legislatures' goal is that they would still be in the form of block grants rather than project by project grants. But I hesitate to make it an agenda item, future agenda item, because we don't know when they're going to do that yet. But as soon as we know, we'll
Okay.
share it.
Good. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think we are all set. Did I miss anything? No, we're good. All right, so we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all for making it into the room. Next time.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we'll see you next time.
All right.
So we're adjourned at 10:47. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.